Who wants to take a minute to dial back to anti-SJW YouTube for a little while? Anyone? Because we got some modern-day examples of this. This is a guy named Appabend, I believe. Let me double-check and make sure that I've got that right. Appabend. There we go. Appabend. And we're just going to go ahead and watch it, but it is a critique of representation in video games, in media, in everything. So let's go ahead and roll with it and see what he's got to say.
I've said this before and I'll say it again. Representation is not a social empowerment movement. On paper, it sounds like a noble goal. Seeing the people who have the same race, gender, ethnicity, nationality, skin color, etc. to be represented a lot more in popular media makes you feel empowered and feel that you can be on the same position as them in the future. In reality, however, it's just a stupid and narcissistic wish fulfillment fantasy from a bunch of entitled brats in social media who claim to be oppressed.
Alrighty! Woo! That was a lot to unpack. So, let's go ahead and go with the first issue. He says, on paper, representation in media is good, and it's great to feel seen as a result of that. But in reality, it's just a social movement from a bunch of entitled brats who feel like they're oppressed. So I got a question. If a trans person is noting that there's no representation of them in media, and a lot of our base prejudices and understandings of people come from the way they're represented in media, and if a trans person is never represented ever in media at all, are they just an entitled brat for asking for them to be represented a little better? Because them having to explain themselves and how they exist without something to compare it to in popular culture can be hard. If we look at media influence, we can find several examples where people's perceptions of a minority group were directly influenced or colored by the media that they consumed. It wasn't just about having an individual who could see themselves in media as a form of empowerment. It's also about having positive representation of you as a person in media so that the people around you do not have negative connotations or associations where you are concerned. This is an issue that we have where when somebody says that, say, they're gay, and they don't have, I'm gonna do a very, very offensive stereotype for a second, but they don't have, you know, the lisp, and they don't have, like, the girl best friend, and they don't have, like, you know, the gay. When they don't have any of that, right? Our media is what largely let that stereotype prevail. The idea that a gay person could be identified by these factors. And while there are some people who do have, you know, these factors associated with themselves and are gay, this is not a way to clock gay people. It just doesn't work that way. So, when you have these bits of representation, when I grew up, the way that we figured somebody was gay was that they did that. If they had those mannerisms. Yeah, the soft wrist. That was what we used. Let's say that you're an autistic person, and you have a hard time explaining to somebody that you're autistic. And I don't remember what the movie was that came out recently that did a super poor representation of what an autistic person was. But like the frame of mind, the frame of reference that somebody has for what an autistic person is based on that media that they've consumed. So it was music. Now, when you tell somebody, oh, I'm autistic, they're going to view you as somebody who's lesser. They're not going to view you as, oh, you're a person like me who's just different. No, they're going to view you as somebody who's lesser than them, who's got a myriad of issues that they have to deal with. If you're watching, you know, you're playing the Resident Evil games, and the only way that you can conceive of a trans person is Alfred Ashford from Code Veronica, your view of that person is going to be of a mentally unstable asshole who's willing to commit genocide to keep their delusions in place. Because that's who Alfred Ashford was. When you have media that only negatively represents you, or doesn't represent you at all, that has an effect on culture. It has an effect on how people perceive those around them in society. It's not just about you as an individual, it's also about other people's perceptions of you.
The implications of all of these demands are genuinely disturbing to me. It implies that people can only relate to characters if they have the same physical characteristics as them.
No, that's not what it says. You can relate to a character without having the same physical characteristics of them. I relate to a character like Samus Aran, who is constantly faced with shit and is constantly having to be silent about the stuff that they're faced with until they finally have the opportunity to engage in a mental breakdown after all the stuff they've had to deal with, say, in Other M. I can identify with that type of person who has to basically play the stoic, even though I'm not like Samus. I'm not a 6'4" tall blonde woman in stilettos. That's not me, but I can still identify with that character. It's not that you can only identify with that character. It's that there are parts of your experience that are rooted in those physical traits. Let's say that you're a black person and you're watching Prince of Bel-Air. There are bits of your experience that are probably going to mirror what Will Smith's character ends up going through. Somebody who knows what it's like to live in poverty, knows what it's like to be profiled by the police, knows what it's like to be screwed over by the system itself. You are likely going to be able to identify that with that much better because this is a person who looks like they do have your lived experience, even if they are a fictional character. It doesn't mean you cannot identify with somebody without them looking like you. That's not the implication. The implication is that it is easier for people to identify that way, and there's nothing wrong with that.
So I assume that there are loads and loads of people in America who don't understand the concept of human empathy and cannot relate to characters because they don't have the same race as them.
That's not what it means, dumbass.
Let's take a favorite film of mine, like Die Hard. Man, I cannot relate to the struggle of a police officer trying to survive a group of terrorists. Why? Because he's white, that's why.
No, that's not what that means. That is a straw man of the representation argument. Dear God.
If I said that, I'll be showered with praise by the progressive media. But
no, you wouldn't. You would probably be lambasted for engaging in a straw man. Because that's what you're doing.
if the demands are towards foreign films or films starring people who are not white, people are gonna throw a massive fit. Oh no, this film about a person struggling to get a job and surviving in the urban environment at large? That's not relatable to me and my family who was also surviving in the urban environment. Why? Because the person is black. Oh no, this film about characters overcoming their poverty is something that me and my family can relate to, but I can't because they're Koreans.
That's not the argument, dude. I don't know how many times I have to say it. The argument is not that you cannot relate to somebody like this. The argument is that A, it is easier to relate to them, and B, there are aspects of that. You know what? Let me make this super easy. If the only way that Jews were ever represented in media were as money-hungry, laundering bankers, what would you assume a Jewish person was? Your assumption of a Jewish person would be based largely in their love for money. Now, in the 90s, this actually was kind of the case. This was the butt of a lot of jokes, to the point where I knew people who, if they found out somebody was Jewish, they would do things like take change out of their wallet and throw it on the ground, expecting them to run and scrounge for it. Because, I mean, they were groveling, money-hungry assholes. That's what Jews were, according to a lot of things they had seen in media. That was what prevailed. There are negative stereotypes that can get associated with someone when they are not put in a protagonistic sense, and instead we see them in a negative light, or even with negative connotations. It's not just that a bunch of narcissistic SJWs on the internet really want to be seen in media or film. It's that media exposure, media has consequences. There's implications to what makes it into the social zeitgeist. But please continue to educate me with your big brain.
Is that how Americans think? Because I'm starting to feel that that's how Americans think, or at least how the corporate executives think Americans think. I think this is precisely why there are so many goddamn Hollywood remakes of foreign films. It's because Americans cannot comprehend the concept of relating towards characters who don't have the same physical characteristic as them, or even spoken the same language.
So, for one, why do we have films that get remade by Americans to have our people in them? Basically, yes, there is an aspect of it where people do find themselves to be more relatable to people who look like them. It's almost like you found the plot finally. Secondly, there is an aspect of the ability to consume media. It's harder for people to consume foreign media or to even be incentivized to consume foreign media if they are not already conditioned to do so. Take somebody who watches American cartoons and now introduce them at age 25 to anime for the first time. Is it going to be easier to introduce them to a subbed anime or a dubbed anime? And I'm talking nowadays, not early 2000s when the only good dubbed anime was Cowboy Bebop and late stage Dragon Ball Z. I'm talking about right here, right now, where we have things like Full Metal Alchemist. We do live in a post-Cowboy Bebop world. We have Netflix's Evangelion, and yes, I prefer that dub. Don't fucking at me. The only thing I hate about that dub is what they did to one of Shinji's potential love partners, but I don't want to spoil anything there. Is it easier for me to take this person that's used to watching American cartoons, or even just American movies, is it going to be easier for me to hand them a sub of an anime or a dub? It's going to be way easier for me to hand them a dub. It's going to be way easier for them to consume it. When I am confronted with the option of watching something like Passion of the Christ or Pan's Labyrinth, it's harder for me to justify watching either of them because I don't want to read subtitles. For me as a person, I happen to actually consume a lot of media passively while I'm doing other things, while I'm researching, while I'm working on videos. So yes, there is an aspect of having it in my language that helps a shit ton. But continue misunderstanding things.
Unfortunately, this xenophobic mindset infected non-white Americans as well, which leads us into today where stupid—
Wait, it's xenophobic? Apparently it's xenophobic to want to be represented positively in media. Okay.
Americans demand films to have garbage dubs or remakes rather than learning how to read the bottom third of the screen like everyone else around the world when we're consuming your piece of media. I talk about this in another video. What's even more insulting is the think of the children excuse. Representation is necessary so that children who are not white can feel that their existence is validated in this world. You see, this is what happens when you rely on children's parenting job to mainstream entertainment. They're not gonna have their existence validated because you as a parent don't validate their existence.
Okay, no, that's not what that means. You've never talked to anybody who is a minority in the United States who actually has had this before then, right? Okay, look. I'm not saying that you're a minority or a majority. I'm talking about people who you've spoken with. If I as an American, as a white American, don't have this problem because I'm largely represented in most of the media that I watch. If I want to go watch Iron Man, yeah, cool. Tony Stark. He is a white guy with money. Now, I don't have money, but you know, it's easier for me to identify with that aspect there. But if there is, say, a black character on screen who has experiences that don't parallel mine, I might not identify with those as easily. If I am a child, mind you, this is an argument from a child's perspective. If I'm a child, the media that I consume is going to have more of an effect on the way I perceive the world than if I'm an adult. As an adult, I can make these logical leaps without issue. As a child, it's a little bit harder. Especially if, as has so often been the case, if as a child, everybody who looks and sounds like me is some kind of villain? Think about what that does to your psyche. Again, you're a child. It's harder for you to distinguish, fact from fiction earlier on. Media is going to have a profound effect on how you conceptualize the world. What you need to do here is not argue that representation is bad. because some SJWs didn't get the memo on how representation is supposed to be helpful for them. What you need to do is demonstrate that representation is harmful. Please. I ask you, demonstrate to me in this video that representation in media is harmful, is a negative thing. If I swap out a black character, if I swap out a white character for a black character, explain to me how this action is bad. And not a character who was previously white and turned them black. I mean, I'm writing a character and I just choose, you know what? No, I want this character to be black instead. I want their lived experiences to be through that lens. I can actually tell you that my lived experiences as a white person living in a very poor neighborhood was very different than the black people living in that neighborhood. One aspect of that is that I was the one white person on my street. There weren't other white families where I grew up. It was all black families. Their lived experiences and mine are going to be radically different.
You chose to rely on mainstream entertainment to parent your children about the world rather than doing your goddamn job as a parent. One thing I hate more than these entitled brats are the irresponsible parents who chose to submit themselves into the horny and spawning babies into the world when they themselves are not prepared for that kind of responsibility.
I'm gonna go and say right now, no parent is prepared for the responsibility of being a parent. None. Because it is not until the moment where you are a parent where you actually are put in the shoes of someone who is having to deal with what a parent deals with. You can make all this fuss about you need to be prepared, you need to be prepared. To an extent, it's true. But at the end of the day, only when you are a parent will you be able to actually have that type of lived experience.
This is what leads to the destruction of our civilization. Parents who are not ready to be parents spawning children who are never given any sorts of proper care into this godforsaken world because they're too horny and too busy to reach out for any sorts of protection.
Wait. The parents are too busy and horny to look out for protection? Okay, so according to the chat, you're from Indonesia, so maybe you don't understand what happens, at least here in the United States. Here in the US, we have a large percentage of places that teach abstinence-only education. As a result, parents are told never to have sex at all. Like, potential parents are told never to have sex at all until marriage, which is a wholly unrealistic expectation for many people. I'd even argue most people. People are not taught adequately how to get protection. What is good protection? What is a great use of protection? There were people in my high school who came from this abstinence-only education mindset who thought that putting 2 condoms on made you double protected. Or that a condom was not needed during oral sex because STDs apparently didn't transfer during oral sex. Those were things that I dealt with in my school. Some of these were beliefs that I had at that time, because I was in this magical scenario where I didn't even get a sexual education. Because that sex ed class was supposed to happen, 7th or 8th grade? When I was in Pensacola Christian Academy? But in public schools, it happened in, I believe, 5th grade, at least where I lived. And in 5th grade, I was in Pensacola Christian Academy. I didn't move into the public sector until 6th. So I magically skipped the sex ed class. I never even got to have it. And no, 2 condoms does not stop the semen from getting through better because 2 condoms creates extra friction between the rubber of the 2 condoms, which causes them both to rupture. Putting on 2 condoms does not... Wait, do people in chat not know that? Double layering your condoms does not double your protection. It actually makes it worse because they burst. Because you're rubbing rubber on rubber. What? Okay, apparently there were people who didn't know that either. Cool. I'm glad that I wasn't the only one who suffered through this really, really dumb sexual education. QED, I guess.
It's basically the entire plot of Idiocracy. As an Indonesian myself, I personally don't feel like I've been represented, and I don't need to be because I have bigger issues to deal with, such.
Okay, cool. That's great for you. Does everybody necessarily have your lived experiences? No. And because they don't, you arguing anecdotally from the position of an individual doesn't work here.
Such as an economic crisis, it can really help by supporting me through the links down below. When I notice the gamelan or the angklung in Anthem of the Heart, for example, or when I see the names of the locations and buildings with Malay or Indonesian names in Just Cause 2, I don't feel empowered at all. I look at that and I thought, wow, that's cool, and I move on with my life.
Okay, cool. Again, that works for you, not everyone. What's going on? Let me finish this segment. Also, yeah, apparently there is the problem where if you just move on from this, then why are you getting mad about it?
I don't go out and dedicate my life to beg for the entertainment industry senpai to notice me because I am very secure with my existence even if YouTube and Google aren't. But
okay, so I'm just going to go and say this right now. You, personally, as a single individual, are secure in your existence. That's wonderful. Not everybody is. Not everybody is secure in their existence. That doesn't make them weaker, it just makes them different. Then again, with you shrieking about this as loud as you are, I'm curious as to how secure you actually feel.
that's the thing, isn't it? I'm not some narcissistic blogger seeking some vapid validation in the world. I am just some Indonesian guy making YouTube videos on the internet and—
Wait, hold on. So, wait. The blogger is narcissistic, but you as the YouTuber, a position that is occupied primarily by narcissists, I should know, hi. You get the free pass. Your opinion is fine, but the blogger's opinion is not. Okay, sure thing.
And speaking as an Indonesian, I would appreciate if you let me speak for myself.
Nobody said they had to speak for you. Well, I say nobody. I'm lying. There are some people who try to white knight and try to speak on, like, as authorities for minority groups. And yeah, you should be allowed to speak for yourself. But guess what? You can. You're doing it right now. You're doing a great job speaking for yourself right now. But here's the thing. What you're doing here is not functionally speaking for yourself. What you're doing here is speaking on behalf of Indonesians. You see, when you take up the stance that you're doing, you're taking up the stance of speaking for minority groups. You are arguing for minority groups. You are arguing that they do not need representation because you, as an individual, perceive yourself a very particular way. But here's the thing. When you make this argument, I would like to speak for myself, and then you proceed to speak on behalf of others afterwards, you don't really have a very valid argument anymore. Your argument now has completely fallen by the wayside because you are not operating within the confines of your argument at this point. The lack of self-awareness is very, very strange.
Church published an article talking about how Disney's latest film, Raya and the Last Dragon, makes the writer feel like she's finally being noticed by Hollywood senpai.
No, it's not about being noticed by Hollywood. It's about being seen culturally.
Never look a tulip in the eye.
It's about you as an individual having a place in the cultural zeitgeist. That's not about Hollywood noticing you. That's a terrible reduction of that argument. It's a straw man, which seems to be the only thing you're capable of here.
And if you cringe by my anime way of describing it, good, because that's how cringy this entire thing is. It's a bunch of narcissistic entitled brats who want to be noticed by Hollywood senpai, but I don't want to be noticed by Hollywood because Hollywood is a cesspool of the most garbage individuals on planet Earth who's only famous because they know how to act. But
wait, so because they know how to wait. So let me get this straight. Bloggers are narcissists. Hollywood people are assholes because they know how to act. But individual YouTubers, they're fine. Do you listen to yourself when you make content? I'm just curious. How self-aware are you? Now, I'm speaking as a dude who is unironically speaking through a gender-bent Neko version of a cartoon avatar that he used to speak through 3 years ago on the internet. I wholly understand that there is a lot of unironic cringe associated with what I do and how I act. I'm also a leftist operating as a VTuber. At appropriation of Japanese idol culture, which is incredibly toxically capitalist. When I'm anti-capitalist, I wholly understand that there are layers of cringe in regards to what I do on the internet. But I feel as though you have a noted lack of self-awareness. Completely. Also, Hollywood is more than just actors. It's also artists. It's also producers. It is also directors. It is also, and I could go on and on and on, with the different people who work within Hollywood. You can keep on engaging in hasty generalization fallacies and then argue that you can generalize all of your people by the anecdote of you. But at the end of the day, it just makes me cringe at what I feel like I'm going to get from the rest of your content. And according to chat, apparently you were part of Comicsgate and stuff. Oh, Jesus. Oh, jeez.
But let's read the article anyway. The writer begins by describing how Raya and the Last Dragon is so much more than the latest Disney flick. No, it's not, writer. It's exactly just that. Another freaking Disney flick. In all honesty, I haven't seen the film. I'll probably talk about it separately when I got the chance to see it with my girlfriend. But
So wait, hold on. It's only just the latest Disney flick. It's not more than that. But you haven't seen it? I'm going to go ahead and say right now, you sound like somebody who hadn't watched Zack Snyder's Justice League and then argued that it's going to be just as shitty as Joss Whedon's Justice League without having watched it. I'm just going to go ahead and say right now, Zack Snyder's Justice League was awesome as shit.
But I can tell you this, it's not exactly something I'd waste a Disney Plus subscription for, or even $5 in the theaters that just recently opened, and that's precisely why I joined in with the Straw Hat Cruise for it. And even then, I'd rather you guys...
Oh my god. You're so virtuous for pirating it. Your individual... Look. Your individual aptitude for piracy does not suddenly make for a good argument, my friend.
Guys not watch this film and watch something better like the Ong Bak trilogy. The writer says that thanks to her growing in America, she hardly ever saw Asians in movies or television, and if she did, they were rarely brown and Southeast Asian like her. What I absolutely despise about this argument is that the writer insinuates from this paragraph that she can't find enjoyment out of a film because the characters don't have the same physical characteristics as the writer.
Alright, I want you guys to read this sentence right here. I want you to see where in this sentence, or even track down the article, see where in that article this argument was made. I want you to find where specifically they said, I did not enjoy any of those films because a brown Asian person was not in them. Go ahead. I'll wait. I'll pause the video. Find it. And now that you're back, let me know in the comments section.
If it's really that necessary for you to see yourself represented on a film, you can just scour through the internet for the latest Indonesian or Thailand films because that's where they got most of the brown Asians at. I recommend the Raid duology myself. Also Headshot, The Night Comes For Us, Triple Threat, Dillad 19... Okay, not that one. But apparently we have to beg for the Disney Corporation to make sure that your pathetic existence is validated.
It's not about... Oh my god. Your pathetic existence is validated. Okay, so can I go ahead and point out that her argument isn't that if we were to accept that her argument was that you couldn't get enjoyment out of these films, okay? That's not what's being said in the article. But let's pretend for a minute that it is. If that is what's being said, the argument does not then follow find films from your own region or whatever. You might have grown up in America and not spoken languages from any of those films. But you still grew up in America. Your culture is American. You grew up here. Having representation for yourself in this culture would still be useful and neat. And again, you haven't demonstrated that it's harmful. You've just argued that people are narcissists while operating as one.
By talking about how the film is so Southeast Asian. The main character is voiced by Kelly Marie Tran, who is Vietnamese American. The screenplay was written by writers who both trace their roots back to Southeast Asia. So what you're saying is this film that has Southeast Asian influences is produced by Asian Americans rather than actual Southeast Asians. That explains why I feel there's something off with it, but what do I know as a native Southeast Asian? Clearly, I need to bow to the superiority of Asian Americans that are apparently more cultured than me.
Nobody said that. Nobody said that. And moreover, there could be other people on those teams that do trace their roots directly to literally like places that you live. Also, as a fantasy series, as a fantasy movie, which I'm assuming it is, there could also be a mixture of cultural influences creating the environment in that movie, which means it wouldn't necessarily, represent Indonesia perfectly either. Do you listen to the points you make? I feel like you only communicate through straw men. It feels really weird being here in this position where I'm having to watch your video, and it just sounds to me like you're coming at this not watching the movie, but somehow arguing on some level of authority for the movie, not knowing everybody on the production team, but arguing that the production team were all Asian Americans, which according to you means that they didn't grow up in any of those Asian countries. You're ignoring the fact that they could be dual citizens or anything else, and that all bloggers are narcissists and all Hollywood people are assholes, but then ignoring the fact that you're a YouTuber, and I'm just going to go ahead and say this again like I did before, a good majority of people on this platform are narcissists. I believe that an argument could be made that I am one too. Like, the lack of self-awareness and the straw-manning and the snide small-dicked anger, they're astounding. I don't know how much more of this video I can stomach. I think this is something that would have been better suited for an edited video, where I could have gotten his main points and structured my video around them instead of doing this live. Doing this live was a mistake. I don't know. Maybe I'll revisit this in edited form. Who knows? That said, if you guys have any comments, if there's something in the rest of his video that I'm missing, we're getting up on the 35-minute mark. This is too far. If there's something in this video that I'm missing, please let me know. I just can't take it anymore. I can't. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, hit subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, everyone, insert end of video tagline here. I need a drink.